Welcome in the latest episode of the Five on the Floor podcast on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Doing something a little bit different tonight. We've got a full pod that's coming up, which Alex Toledo, myself, and Alphonse Sidney recorded prior to the Kings game. But because the Kings game was so crazy with the Heat winning in overtime, we've got Alex Toledo right now on the scene at American Airlines Arena. Ethan Skolnick back here in Fort Lauderdale. But we're going to do a very quick intro pod for you, and then we're going to get to the pod that Alex, myself, and Alf did basically yesterday afternoon. All right, so let's get to five things tonight on this win here for the Miami Heat. Again, winning in overtime, as they always do, and winning at home, which they've done all but one time this season, that one loss to the Lakers. No Jimmy Butler tonight. First thing I wanted to get to with you, James Johnson. They don't win this game without James Johnson. This was like James Johnson from the 30-11 team. What are we seeing with him right now? And in your view, I can't understand why he wasn't playing if he was looking anything like this.
Yeah, I mean, this has been absolutely spectacular. They absolutely do not win tonight without James Johnson. We 100% saw the guy that Pat and the Heat front office wanted to re-sign to a 4-year deal a few summers ago. But, yeah, James Johnson, we finally got to see everything we've been talking about, right? Everything they could use from him. He was playing some pretty good post defense out there, and it just absolutely balled out. He's a shooter now, apparently, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is the second game now where he's been making threes down the stretch, and you're kind of like, no, yes. And that's how I felt with him a couple of years ago. I mean, look, if he's even a 33 to 35% three-point shooter, but he's making them down the stretch of games and gives them an option, let's be honest, Jimmy Butler's been worse down the stretch from three-point range than James Johnson has been. Like, JJ gave them everything, and Jimmy missed the game with the hip injury and trying to get a little bit of rest. But JJ gave him everything tonight that you wanted from Jimmy. So tremendous performance. Number two here for you, because this came up on Twitter quite a bit. We got to get to something that I think people perceive as negative. The zone defense, has it run its course to a certain degree? Because they can't box out in it. Like, that's a consistent problem.
Yeah, I mean, it was not looking great whatsoever out there, along with Duncan and Goran Dragic. Like, that's too much for Bam to try to hold together on defense. And Bagley was getting, a lot of those putback attempts, getting to the middle of the floor. So was De'Aaron Fox. It was just very clumsy out there. I think Spo kind of wanted to make a statement, and it ended up working. But a couple times it looked like it was not going to end up working. But, it ended up working better when they threw James Johnson back in there.
Well, it does. I mean, they need someone to at least high point it. And without Derrick Jones Jr. for a stretch of the game, too, it got worse. My only thing is, this is the counter to it, because Clay put out there that Clay Ferraro from Channel 10, whose work I respect, we've had him on the pod, but Clay put it out there, that maybe the zone has run its course. But the thing is, if you don't have Jimmy and you don't have Justice, then you don't have DJJ. I mean, you don't have anybody you can guard. And so the zone, I think, becomes a necessity to some degree. Number three here with you, Kendrick Nunn. I was thinking at the end of the game, and this is even with Goran Dragic handling, and I know Goran had that great spin but couldn't finish. At certain points there, I was like, get the ball in Kendrick's hands. Like, I've gotten to the point with him as an undrafted rookie. I trust him with the ball, and I certainly trust him at the line. Like, to me, a guy who makes that shots consistently down the stretch from the line, and I know he wasn't getting to the line at all earlier in the season, that's a guy who's had to do it as the best player on his team for a while and was trusted with it. Like, I feel like Kendrick Nunn is looking like a go-to player. Am I wrong?
No, I mean, I don't think you're wrong in the sense of somebody who's going to be a reliable scorer for years to come in the league. I don't know that he's ever going to be, one of those top three guys on a playoff level team, even though he kind of has been this season more or less, right? Like, he's been their third leading scorer all season. But no, I think I absolutely agree with you. Kendrick Nunn is reliable at this point. He knows that, him and Goran aren't really guys who will break down defenders one-on-one. And I think that has a lot to do with why Spo runs the thing he does on offense, where screens are constantly there to open up guys like Duncan and Kendrick Nunn and Goran, so that they don't have to do the work on their own. And Kendrick Nunn knows how to take advantage of it at this point. I think he's figured out what to shoot, what to pass, things we've talked about in the past already. But at the same time, he's very aggressive in it. He's not hesitating whatsoever, and he's just getting quicker and quicker as the games go along and making the reads.
Well, the other thing that's been positive, I'm going to look at these numbers, Alex, overnight. The Nunn-Dragic numbers together were terrible for a while, and I feel like this is just eye test. I feel like they've gotten better. So I want to take a look at that because that is a duo that's going to play together quite a bit, especially when it's clear that Spoelstra doesn't feel Tyler Hero is all the way back from whatever it is he was dealing with. And so they gave Nunn the minutes. Number 4 tonight, and then 5 will be real quick here. The Bam's performance. I think what we're seeing a little bit is at times he's left out there on an island. You mentioned it, and then the rebounding becomes a problem. They put Myers Leonard in for that. He put that Myers Leonard in for that late possession. He got the box out against Bagley, which drew the foul. But are we at a stage where Bam is being overburdened?
Yeah, to a certain degree, yeah. It has a lot to do with their injuries, especially, obviously, Jimmy was out tonight. Justice has been out for most of the season. And I think those are two guys who would help immensely with the workload there on Bam. And I think because of that, even though Bam is still having games where, he's doing all of these things like he did tonight, even though tonight wasn't one of his better games by any means. But at the same time, it's leaving an effect on him. I think it's obvious when you watch him out there. Their interior defense isn't nearly as strong as it was when the season started. And it's the same thing with the rebounding. There's too many times where we saw them get out-hustled out there by the other team. And I think that has a lot to do with how many negative defenders are throwing out there all at once. And that has a lot more to do with the injuries, like I said, more than Spo. But it's something to watch out for because they're trying to keep that 2 seed, right? That's the goal for the season. If you're trying to keep that 2 seed and get Orlando in the first round, you got to keep winning games.
Yeah, it's the goal for the season, except for before the All-Star game, because I'm not sure Spoelstra wants to coach that team, and if they're the 2 seed, the All-Star team, and he's going to end up getting it. Last thing, I know you got to run to the locker room, so I want to let you go. 30 seconds or less. Is this a good win, or is this they beat the Kings? How do you view this one?
Honestly, it's not a bad win at all. It was not a great-looking game by any means. There was a few times in the fourth quarter there where I'm like, oh, this doesn't look like it's going to be one of those games where they figure it out. But I think it ended up being a good win just because they were able to hustle it out, grind it out through the end, even without somebody who was clearly on outside of James Johnson. And, James Johnson was hitting spot-up threes. He wasn't just dribbling down the floor and creating offense for them in the way that Jimmy does or in the way that Justice does when he's healthy. And I like the way that they ended up winning the game. And despite the zone stuff hurting the defense, despite all the injuries, to end up winning this game, I think it's pretty big for them.
Yeah, and look, they keep finding ways to win at home, and that's going to carry them a long way into the playoffs. And we talk about getting a home court seed. The 2 seed obviously would put them in home court for 2 rounds if they can win the first round series. So that would be huge. All right, Alex, follow him at Tropical Blanket. He's going to get to the locker room after the break. It's going to sound like an open to a totally different podcast, but we wanted to give you both tonight. So check it out, and obviously check out all of our sponsors.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a Miami Heat and NBA podcast from Ethan Skolnick with Alphonse Sidney, a.k.a. Alf954. Brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
Welcome to the latest episode of the 5 on the Floor podcast on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I'm Ethan Skolnick. Make sure you check out 5reasonsports.com. Spell it out, F-I-V, reasonsports.com, the only fully free website in South Florida providing constant South Florida sports content. No paywall, people. No paywall. You don't want a paywall. What do you want to pay for content for? Anyway, we've got a great episode coming up today. A little bit different. Some we're going to do, it's kind of looking back at the first half of the season, even though we're a little bit past the halfway point at this stretch. But before we do, I want to tell you about a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network and a sponsor of this episode. That's East Coast Public Adjusters, which wants to let you know there's only 9 months left to open your IRMA claim. That's right, only 9 months. So call now before it's too late. That's 855-GET-ECPA, 855-GET-ECPA. You have a leaky roof, experiencing plumbing issues. These problems are most likely covered by your insurance policy. So don't guess and don't settle for less. For a free, no obligation, that's right, no obligation inspection, call East Coast Public Adjusters. Been in business for 31 years. That's since 1988. Actually make it 32 years at this point, since the Miami Heat were born. So here's the number again, 855-GET-ECPA. That's 855-GET-ECPA, or visit the website, ecpaclaims.com. Again, that's ecpaclaims.com. And now, today's episode. All right, Ethan Skolnick back here, full crew for this one. We've been waiting to do this one for a little while. We've got Alex Toledo from Tropical, he is Tropical Blanket. He's not from Tropical Blanket. And we've got Alphonse Sidney. You can follow him at Alf954. All three of us were at the watch party on Friday night, and that turned out to be a good one. That was a win against Oklahoma City. Obviously, that went about as well as it could have gone. We're now 3-1 in watch parties this season, breaking the streak from last year. And then the Heat lost in San Antonio. We're actually recording this before the Heat play Sacramento. So hoping that not a whole lot changes in that game, but obviously we'll keep you posted. But here's the topic, guys, and I threw this on Twitter a couple days ago. I got some interesting responses. Who or what is most responsible for this Heat season, which by all accounts, even with the loss in San Antonio, is better than anybody expected? I mean, I had them at over. We all had them at over. The Vegas odds about 43, 45, 43 and a half. But I had them at 48 wins. Nobody in our little circle on 5 Reasons Sports had them with more than 51 or 52, and they're trending above this. So I'm going to throw out some things here, and I'm going to get to both of you guys on this. Identified 4 things or 4 people or groups that have contributed to this. And I'm not going to mention Pat Riley because he's kind of the orchestrator of this whole thing. So it's what's actually happened on the floor since he put this team together. And the 4 things that we've identified: Jimmy Butler and his addition, Bam Adebayo's growth, Eric Spoelstra's packaging of this whole thing and putting his vision on the floor, and then the rookies. And I'm going to include Duncan Robinson in the rookies because even though technically he's not, it's really his first extended playing time. So we're going to go around the room here a little bit, and I will start with Alex. For you, going down from 4 to 1, what's number 4?
Oh, we're starting with number 4. I was over here bracing, trying to decide what was going to be number 1.
No, we'll give you time for that.
Oh, my God. Now I was thinking of the wrong thing. Okay. Now I'm on the spot. If I go number 4, I think I'm going to have to go Bam, man. And I feel like I'm as high on Bam as anybody is. But if you're just talking about what got this team to that next level where they look like they're kind of projected to finish in the mid-50s right now, maybe they finish like 53 wins, something like that. What put them over the top, I think, had more to do with everything else, with the addition of Jimmy, with the shooting, and with what Spo's done with the team. I think Bam's leap has been awesome for them. It's been super important for the defense, but I figured that he was going to be a good defender anyways. I don't think he took the leap on defense. I just think he took an overall leap where his offensive game is more polished. He's kind of put everything together, but he was already a plus defensive player coming into the season. So I think everything else had more to do with it than Bam's growth per se.
Alf, do you agree that's number 4? Because I do not.
I actually, and this is going to sound bad because I'm a huge fan, but I would actually say Spoelstra is number 4 just because, and it's not that he's not done anything. I mean, he's done what he always does, right? He's put together in fact, actually, the defense is not Spoelstra level defense right now. But he's done a lot of what he's always done. He's trusted guys. He's given guys room to grow. They're instituting their zone defense. Offensively, he's done a lot of nice things. But I think in that totem pole that you put up there, I would actually put Spoelstra at the bottom of it. And maybe it's just because he's doing what I expect Spoelstra to do when he has a group this good.
I'm going to put the rookies 4th. I have both Bam and Spoelstra ahead of them. Again, not that they haven't been great. We've seen Tyler Hero, and now that I say this, before the Sacramento game, he probably scored 25 at home against Sacramento because it just feels like he's played – well, not feels like. The stats show he's played a lot better at home. But he didn't look great against San Antonio, and I feel like he's hit a little bit of a wall here. Nothing has changed my opinion about his upside, but he's gone through these peaks and valleys a little bit this year, particularly on the road. I think missing some time hurt him a little bit. But the numbers are pretty clear. If you look at what Christian Hernandez and others have researched, they're really not that much better with Tyler on the floor. I think that'll change over time. Sometimes, players can be very important without having great plus-minus numbers, or, Dwayne Wade at the end was a minus player, but I feel like he made an impact for the Heat anyway. And I love Tyler Hero's future, and he's exceeded all expectations. But I wouldn't necessarily say he's as impactful as the others. And then you take a look at, Kendrick Nunn and Duncan Robinson, both of whom in the starting lineup, which is tremendous. You have 2 guys who had to go to the New York offices where Adam Silver was to get their draft handshakes because they didn't have draft handshakes because they weren't drafted. And we've seen Kendrick make really steady progress. And I feel like we have to sort of reevaluate what his upside is now, because he has taken in information and processed it and put it into practice on the floor so well. I don't know why we thought he was a finished product. Not we, but well, maybe I did a little bit. But I think we kind of viewed him as more of a finished product, maybe because he's 24, and Alpha and I talked about this on a podcast. But like, he's made so much growth that, like, I wonder what his next season's going to look like. Like, can he be a top 6, top 7 2-guard in the league? Maybe. And so I don't want to take anything away from him or the fact that Duncan Robinson has improved enough in other areas that his elite shooting can come to the forefront. But I can't put the rookies with Jimmy, Bam, and Spoelstra in terms of impact. I mean, if you don't have the rookies and you have Bam and Jimmy and you have Spoelstra and you have some veteran role guys, you're still pretty damn good, I'm guessing. You probably would have had to rely on Dion and JJ to get their bleep together. But as much credit as I want to give those 3 guys, I have them 4th. So let's go to 3rd. If you have so basically, if you have Spoelstra 4th, Alf, who's 3rd?
I think I'm being super contrarian right now, but I would put Jimmy 3rd, just because I think. And the thing is, I feel like I don't want anybody to think I'm discounting any of these 4 things. I think they're all 4 of them are super important. But Jimmy, his attitude, his work ethic, everything has been completely infectious. The entire team is following his lead. And I think a lot of what you're seeing on the floor comes from having a leader like Jimmy. But Jimmy himself, as far as the shooting and lately, especially with the crunch time execution, like, he hasn't been great, right? So as good as he's been, as impactful as he's been, I just think when you look at all 4 things, he would be 3rd in that line for me. But it's not taken away from whatever he's been, because he's been so impactful as far as assists, rebounds, playmaking, everything else. Like, you have the NBA.com MVP ladder. He's always 4th or 5th every time they come out with that thing because of his impact on the court. But I would just say, out of those 4 things, to me, Jimmy would be 3rd.
Alex?
Man, I agree with Alf. I was trying to talk my way out of it, especially after he said his take. I was already certain that I was going to say it. I was like, maybe I should change it up now. But no, the more I thought about it, the more I agreed. I think we knew what Jimmy was going to give the Heat coming into this, right? And I think in some ways he's been better than we thought. Obviously, he's been a much better facilitator than maybe we accounted for coming in. But at the same time, his scoring has gone down. So I think that kind of balances out. And although he's obviously been extremely important, he's been a top 10 MVP candidate since the season started, like Alf called and like I disagreed with coming into the season. I'm still going to put him number 3 because I think the other 2 things end up being much more important for the Heat reaching that next level that we talk about. And Jimmy, if he was a little bit of a better scorer, I might have given him that edge to end up, 1 or 2. But everything balancing out, I think the other 2 things are more important, even though Jimmy has been absolutely the best player on this team. As much as I admire Bam's game, I think Jimmy's been the number 1 most important thing for this team. And even with that, he's number 3 behind the other 2 somehow. I don't know how that makes sense, but it does in my head.
The funny thing is when I set out to do this, I thought we'd all have the same 4, and we're not. So that's good,
really
actually.
Tough ranking. If it was maybe we had to pick one, it would be easier. But I don't know.
Well, I think it depends on what you value. All right. So I had the rookies 4th. I'm going to put Spoelstra 3rd, and I know that might surprise some people because I'm kind of known as a Spo stan a little bit. And I think he's done a tremendous job. And the column I wrote at Media Day was Erik Spoelstra has his team again. You could see the smile that day. You could see just getting Hassan out of here, having the power to clean out other problems, which I think he's been empowered to do this season along, with Pat's empowered him, but also supported him on that, which I think has been positive. Being able to put in his system with players who aren't jaded, I think has all been good. These are all the things that they've put on the floor have been things Erik is wanting to put on the floor, but it's a players' league in my view still. And so as great as Erik Spoelstra has been, and I think he's runaway coach of the year. You can give me what Nick Nurse has done in Toronto, which has been terrific, and obviously he's gotten some attention after winning the championship. You can give me Bud, but with Bud it's a little weird for me because he won it in Atlanta. Then things fell apart in Atlanta. He didn't look like such a great coach, which happens when you lose talent. And then he went to Milwaukee, and he's been a huge improvement over Jason Kidd. and everybody else they've had there. But I still think Spo is the coach of the year. But I don't think he's been the most important influence here of everybody. I think he's empowered. Like I said, empowerment's a big word with the Heat, and he's empowered the rookies. They're dream makers, as he says, and he's putting them in position to succeed. I wouldn't trade him for any other coach in the league right now, to be honest. I think he's gotten better at the communication thing, which was always perceived as a weakness for him, and I think some cases it was. I think the strategy thing, he's always been good. I think his in-game adjustment's been better this year. I think he set a good tone, and I think obviously he presents himself well publicly. He does all the things you want a coach to do. He's comfortable in his own skin. I don't feel like he's wearing Pat Riley's clothes anymore. All of that is good, and yet I still have him third. So let's go over it before we go to break. The two that I have left are Bam and Jimmy. The two that Alex has left are
Spo and the shooters and the rookies.
And the two that Alf has left?
Bam and the rookies.
We don't agree. I love this. I love this. This is terrific. All right, we'll get back to this in a second. I want to tell you about a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and that's the Seltzer Mayberg Law Firm. You can find them at onecalllegal.com. Spell it out, O-N-E, calllegal.com. Someone there 24 hours a day to take your particular concern, get you to the right attorney, and they've got attorneys for just about everything. Obviously, immigration. We talk about traffic tickets. We talk about personal injury. They do sports law. They do a whole bunch of things at Seltzer Mayberg. They're based in North Miami, right off I-95. Say hello to Eric and Mendy and David and everybody who's there. And we actually work out of that office from time to time, so you may run into us. We're going to start recording more podcasts from the Seltzer Mayberg studios. They've been a big supporter of ours from the beginning. We appreciate it if you support them, and we would not have them as an endorser if we didn't think that they do great work. So check out the Seltzer Mayberg Law Firm. That's onecalllegal.com. All right, let's get to number 2. I'll start this time. I'm going to go with Bam for number 2. Tough call, and he's been tremendous. He makes this thing go defensively in a lot of different ways. And I think if not for another factor, which I'm going to get into, I would probably have Bam first. But I have him second in part because we did kind of see this coming. The per 36-minute stuff, we've done a whole podcast on Bam, was pretty consistent with what he's doing now. It's obviously better in a lot of areas. But he basically is what I thought he would be once Hassan got out of the way. and so that's what we've seen. And we've seen the confidence grow. The post moves against OKC, he looked like a totally different player than we saw a few months ago in that regard. And I think he's going to be a multi-time All-Star. He's got the right 3 influences around him in terms of bigs and Bosh and Haslam and Zoe. And they've passed on the franchise mantle to him, and he's taken it. And it's tremendous. And he's 22 years old, and he's a great kid, and I hope he doesn't change. It's all fantastic. But he was here already. He was here with a team that had struggled. He needed more of a role. He's gotten more of a role. He's done a lot with it. But to me, and I'll get into this in number 1, that's different from coming in and not just embracing a culture, but in some ways, the guy I'm going to talk about at 1 changed the culture back to the way it was. Bam was not capable of doing that himself. Somebody else had to set the tone for it, and that's why I'm going to have Bam Adebayo number 2. Alf.
I actually agree with you there. Bam is number 2 for me, just because what he allows them to do, especially defensively, where he guards 1 through 5. He makes up for a lot of deficiencies. And he just all around, to me, he's just been all around their most impactful player on the floor. Like I said, it's no diss to Jimmy at all. It's just Bam has just been so good, and his step up has honestly, you look at it and you say the Heat do have a second star, but we didn't go into the season thinking that, right? So it's always been about, who are they going to add to Jimmy? Now you're thinking, who are they going to add to Jimmy and Bam? So the thinking on this has completely changed because Bam has taken it. And the thing is, like you said, we talked about this per 36. But one thing that we haven't talked about is the fact that without Winslow, he's bringing up the ball a lot of times, initiating offense, just doing so many things that even when we talked about the per 36 minutes and getting Hassan out the way, we did not know that this was going to be what Bam was. Like, we did not know that he was going to be bringing the ball up the floor at the top of the key, running the offense. That was not – I don't think anyone called that this year. So looking at him and what he's done, I put him at because we're talking about why have the Heat been as successful in this first half of this year? Now, if we're going to talk about how they're going to be successful in the playoffs and going forward, I think my list needs to flip upside down.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason we're here, to me, on my list, number 2 would be Bam.
Alex?
All right, so this is another tough one, but I think I end up deciding to go with the shooters, a.k.a. the rookies. And I'm going to include Duncan Robinson in here because he did not play last season. I think he absolutely counts. He was just as much an addition to the regular rotation as Kendrick Nunn and Tyler Hero were. But in this aspect, the Heat take 3 solid, excruciating W's with these 3 guys because the offense was the biggest question coming into the season. We know Jimmy and Bam are very good players. Obviously, Bam ended up being better than we thought. And like I said before, we knew what Jimmy was going to give us more or less, you know. But what really took this team to that next level, I believe, as far as the actual individuals on the court, what took them from a 46-47 level win team to a, let's say, 53-55 is the shooting more than anything. I think the fact that they have reliable shooting all around the court at all times, no matter if it's a starting lineup, the bench, any other types of lineups the Spo is running, there's always more than adequate shooting out there because Duncan Robinson is obviously special. He's been maybe the best shooter in the league along with Davis Bertans from the Wizards all season. Tyler Hero has been an awesome rookie. Kendrick Nunn has been an awesomer rookie. And I think they're all providing a lot of necessary, you know, pull-up shooting, spot-up shooting, scoring off of the catch and driving in, like, all that stuff that they needed in order to have a really good offense. And now they've been a better offensive team than defensive team. And I think that has a lot more to do with the shooting because I don't think it would be near that level on offense if it was just Jimmy and Bam with a bunch of so-so shooters. Like, let's say you had them out there with Justice and Derrick Jones, or if James Johnson played more all year, if Dion played more all year, as opposed to the 3 rookies getting their minutes. I think this has more to do with the team they are right now.
All right. Well, we're going to get to number 1 here in a second. I want to tell you about another sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and that is Dutch Valley Farms. What's Dutch Valley Farms? For starters, they're not your average cannabis grow farm. They've got deep roots in the 305, and this hometown group of doctors, CPA, and Silicon Valley professionals have taken their talents from the 305 to the 503 to make you the finest flower out there. How does Miami find its way all the way out in Oregon? Simple, a team with a shared belief in cannabis research and erasing the stigma behind the bud. Today, the Dutch Valley Farms crew is bringing together old school growing practices with new school tech to deliver a consistently clean, high quality experience you can feel good about. The proof is in the plant. Do you want more information? Visit DutchVF.com. That's DutchVF.com, or follow them on Instagram at Dutch Valley Farms. All right, let's get to number 1, and I will let Alex start. Go ahead.
So if it hasn't been obvious yet, my number 1 is Coach Erik Spoelstra. And I think that's pretty funny that I'm the one that's going to do it. I think you guys both had him 3 or 4. Am I right?
Yes.
And after the whole thing that happened with me and him that he probably forgot about the next day, I'm going to go with him here. I think a lot of what I applied onto the last point with the rookies and the shooters applies here. I think Spo has put everybody on this roster, everybody, except maybe Dion Waiters, in the best position they could absolutely be in an offense, right? On a team that's trying to win and be very competitive at the highest levels.
Alex, I would argue that Dion is in his best possible position right now. Maybe not in the offense. So,
hey, man.
Yeah.
He's the only one who's been on a downhill turn over the past few years. Everybody else has been on an uphill turn thanks to Spo since the beginning of the year. And I think putting Jimmy as this number 1 facilitator / scorer more than a scorer / facilitator ended up being a game-changing thing for him because he put these guys in positions to play. And I'm talking about the rookies and the shooters. He put them in the position to be there out there next to Jimmy, to really believe in them and give them solid minutes, even though guys were in and out, which contributed to that. I think putting Jimmy in that spot as facilitator got even more out of him because he's not forced to do the carrying of the offense. He emboldened the shooters to go out there and launch. These guys are not hesitating for the most part. And all of a sudden you've got 3 very, very, very good shooters thanks to putting Kendrick Nunn in that position as a starting point guard while all of us kind of questioned it or a little bit skeptical about it. He stayed with it throughout. It's been one of the best lineups in the league. And, putting Goran off the bench, which was something that we talked about coming into the season, and leaving him there, never putting him back into the starting lineup. He recognizes Goran's defensive woes and why that doesn't make sense in the starting lineup. And then I think on the same end, like, he's made Myers look better, right? Obviously, Kelly hasn't been awesome. I think there has more to do with maybe his knee, but he's still shooting 40% from three. I think guys you're getting the absolute best out of everybody. I think the fact that he's been able to draw up a defense that started off as being top 7 for the first couple months, and then it's been I think now they're 14th, and they've been around 14th in the league on defense for the past few weeks. That's still pretty impressive, guys. It could be better, right? But the fact that Justice has missed a lot of time, James Johnson hasn't started playing until recently, Derrick Jones Jr. was in and out, and they're constantly running out guys who would look at to be like either average or slightly below average defenders, like Myers Leonard, like Duncan Robinson. Hero and Nunn are rookies. They're not plus defenders yet. There's like 2 or 3 of them out there at all times, and they're still a very good defense. So I think Spo, it's not perfect, but it's as close as you can get it to an A+ season with a brand new team.
Well, one guy, it's been funny, and we didn't get to him, but I think Goran Dragic might be 5 for both of us, all of us, or somewhere in the mix. So I'm glad you mentioned Goran because we really haven't touched on him much. Alf?
I think Goran falls under Spo because I don't think he would be having the same impact if he ended up starting like it sounded like he was going to before the season started.
Agreed, but all 3 of us said that Goran should come off the bench as a 6th man. So I don't know if that was Spo's hardest decision. I think it was just convincing. I think the tough thing for Spo was convincing people to do these things, right? Like sitting down. Convincing Pat, but
called Goran the incumbent before the season started.
I know. Alf and I called BS on that at the time, but right. But he sitting down with Goran, and as much as Goran's a team guy, getting a very proud player who's a world champion to agree to a change in role, which again couldn't get Dion to do it, but he got Goran to do it, and he deserves credit for that. So I think Spo's done a masterful job, but I just wouldn't put him first. But I respect your opinion, and I know, look, you got to get back in his good graces after that incident he forgot about in 13 seconds. Stop worrying about that damn thing. You're going to have more conflicts with Eric like that down the road. Trust me. Alf, what do you got?
It's going to be funny for me because how hard I've been on Kendrick Nunn, but I'm putting the rookies, and because we're talking about why are the Heat where they are right now? And to me, they don't survive the Justice injuries. They don't survive the Dion and the James Johnson, whatever you want to call them, suspensions, spectacles, whatever you want to call it. They don't survive all that stuff unless Kendrick Nunn is a super surprising, really good undrafted 24-year-old rookie. Duncan Robinson doesn't make this huge leap from a guy who can barely get on the floor, even in at the end of blowouts, to the point where he's starting in one of the most effective starting lineups in the league, where Tyler Hero is at 19 years old, is playing big minutes. I know he's had a couple rough games, or he's been injured and he had a rough game today, but Tyler Hero is an integral part of this team. He's an integral part of the bench. Without those 3 guys playing at their level on the contracts they're on, by the way, this Heat team would be it'd be a mess, to be quite honest with you. They would have to – Dion Waiters would have to be on the floor. The whole Justice Winslow injury would be way more catastrophic. James Johnson would have had to be rushed back way before he was probably ready. Chris Silva would have been getting a lot more minutes on the squad because they would have just needed the help. So to me, the reason that they're where they are right now is the fact that they've gotten such tremendous production from guys that going into the season, I don't think any of us thought they were going to be that integral into what they were doing, into what they're doing. And like I said before, I think for the Heat to be successful in the second half of the season and going to the playoffs, my entire list needs to be flipped upside down, right? Like, as much as I've enjoyed this first half of the season, I've told you guys before, like, I don't trust, and I feel like I'm doing the wet blanket segment. I don't, as much as the rookies have been important up to this point, and they've boosted the offense, they have to fix this defense, and that starts with Eric Spoelstra and Jimmy Butler. So, like I said, my list would flip. But for right now, the Heat are where they are, in my opinion, because they've gotten production from guys that nobody saw coming into the season being that integral to what they're doing.
Right,
so, one more thing. To add to Alf's point, they're giving a combined, the 3 of them, Duncan Robinson, Kendrick Nunn, Tyler Hero, combined 41 points, about 7 threes a game, as in makes. And that pretty much sums up everything, right? I guess the only disagreement here is with chicken or egg. But other than that, the rookies have been awesome.
No, they've been great, and I'm with Alf that it probably has to flip. But I'm gonna start with where this all started. This franchise was perceived to be going nowhere, guys, until the Heat figured out a way to get Jimmy Butler.
League's future in the league.
League's future in the league, according to Zach Lowe, who was the only national guy who actually turned around in a positive way on the Heat. And it all started by getting the guy that they tried to get last season, that they ended up getting for even less, that they were able to unload Hassan Whiteside. And look, that to me, that's one of the 5 reasons. I mean, we should have done 5 reasons. Hassan Whiteside would be in my 5 reasons. Just getting that attitude off the roster has been an enormous positive. But bringing in Jimmy Butler's attitude and the way that Jimmy, and that's why he's number 1 for me. His shooting has been pretty horrific from the outside. It doesn't seem to be getting better. That's a problem, particularly when you come up to the playoffs. But he's gotten to the line consistently. He can. I mean, this game, even they lost against San Antonio, he made some of the best reads I've seen by anybody in a Heat uniform other than LeBron James and Dwayne Wade over the 25 years I've been covering this team. His ability to read the floor, the defensive intensity that he brings, but the buy-in. To me, that's the thing. All the other things you're talking about that have happened, Eric Spoelstra's success. Well, in part, look, Eric was successful before Jimmy, but Eric found his Zoe. Jimmy came in, and I was told by a couple people close to Jimmy, that basically Jimmy questions every coach he's ever had, and after the first week with Spo, he said, I'm not questioning him anymore. He knows what he's doing. And so, yeah, a lot of that is Eric Spoelstra, obviously, for knowing what he's doing.
But you proved my point.
But right, I did prove your point. No, that's correct. But a lot of it is Jimmy Butler acknowledging that, setting the tone that I'm going to lead, but I'm going to lead in concert with the head coach. That was enormous. And then you talk about the rookies, right? Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn. I have a story coming out this week about Tyler Hero reaching out to him to get together, and Jimmy invited him to his house, and they spent a week together in Chicago. Okay? Jimmy started that. Contacting Bam on his birthday, which Bam wasn't expecting, a minor thing, right? But a show that, like, I value you. The way that he embraced Dragic from the very beginning, after Dragic was in a position where he was almost traded, and was traded this offseason if there wasn't a communication issue with Dallas. That's all Jimmy. We can talk about the on-the-court stuff, but the off-the-court, the setting a tone as a leader, as a star, whether he believes he's a superstar one day or doesn't, or I'm a bad MFer or whatever, but the attitude, the thing with TJ Warren, Jimmy Butler has made this franchise relevant again. Hasn't been perfect. The shooting's been awful, but a lot of that I think has to do with Justice not being in there. But you mentioned what would have happened without Justice. What if you didn't have Jimmy? Who's handling the ball for this team other than Goran? To me, it starts and ends with – it doesn't end with Jimmy Butler, but it starts with Jimmy Butler.
Would have seen a lot of James Johnson handling the ball again.
Right, which we're starting to now anyway. I mean, does anybody – again, we got a minute here. It would have
been time to start tanking at that point.
Well, what would you think? I mean, the reality is that he made them relevant again. He's made them relevant. Like, the other pieces fall into line, but Bam doesn't become this in year 3 without Jimmy there basically telling him, shoot the effing ball, okay, and you know, and all the rest of this. Or Duncan Robinson, this will be in my story, but first time they played pickup together, Jimmy went under a screen, and Duncan looked at him and said, don't do that again. And said Jimmy laughed, and he's like, he knew he had his respect. He gave these guys confidence. And so I'm with you guys on your others. What Spoelstra's done, what the rookies have done, what Bam has done. But if Jimmy doesn't come in here and endorse all of it, this team doesn't look like a contender. And that's why, again, imperfect, but he's been pretty damn good. All right, that's it. That's all the time we've got today. Check out 5reasonsports.com. Check out our sponsors, Dutch Valley Farms, Seltzer Mayberg, ECPA, also our other sponsors, Cervanti Clothiers, which I'm going to have some more about them this week because my jackets came in. And check out our podcast coming up this week. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.